Hello everyone, I am Joy Crookes and I've been hanging out with Rob from Front Row Live, and you can get all the tea right here.
What's up, guys? Rob here, Front Row Live Entertainment. I'm finally hanging out here with Joy Crookes, and I've been a fan of your music for some time. I love your voice. I love how open you are in your lyrics. I want to dive in and talk about this debut album because there's so much vulnerability in this record. And for being a debut album, I feel like that's such a scary thing to do as an artist. Coming into the initial writing process of this debut album, did you know that you were writing it? Or is it something that kind of developed as you were in the studio or just writing music down?
I think you just spend like all of the beginning of your life writing your first album, so I knew that it was going to lead towards an album. But when I started crying all the time, I knew I needed to make an album. And that's not because I needed to put all the tears in the album, I just needed to put my energy into something. And I've always been attracted to bodies of work. So I was like, okay, I need a body of work right now. And that's kind of how Skin came about.
Yeah. And, take me into that writing process because, like, usually there's a particular sound or a particular lyric that kind of kickstarts this entire process. What was that? What was it that kickstarted for you, aside from the tears?
Generational trauma, casual sex, mental health issues, and pints in the park with my mates. They're usually like good starters.
Yeah.
And storytelling and feeling the need to, I guess, immortalize memories are good ingredients to start a song.
And as far as your songwriting, just because like I love the way that you kind of take us into this world, take us into this story. How did you learn to write the way that you do? Is this something that you've always just known how to do, or is this something that you kind of learn from collaborating with producers or even just like as simple as reading books?
I think that I'm a huge music student. Like I've never studied music, but I feel like I've studied music by having a very extensive I guess, catalogue of music that I'm into. I've always listened to things that maybe even made me feel uncomfortable and maybe I wouldn't play outside. I wouldn't wind down my windows and let people know I was listening to it. But I try to listen to everything and try to get my hands on everything. And like I used to buy loads of CDs. I'm like a big CD collector and stuff. So I always try to teach myself as much as I could on music without any kind of like formal education. And then I write with incredible songwriters who I take notes from and learn from literally on like a weekly basis. So I really just studied the art of songwriting, but I don't know if that was a conscious decision. I think it was just something that I felt really attracted to. And I love rappers as well because I think they're some of the best songwriters in the world. And I often, even before I've actually listened to albums, I'll go and for someone like Kendrick, I will read his album before I listen to it.
That's interesting.
Like Mother I Sober, I read before I listened to it.
And do you feel like that changed? Do you feel like that helped you kind of create that story, or do you feel like it made you think of it differently just because you came into it in a different kind of way?
I don't know why I do that. I just think that lyrics are so important to me, and understanding the journey of a song and seeing where there's repetition, seeing where flow changes and assuming flow in places and then being wrong. I think it's like I set myself up for a first impression. Because it's like, I don't know, it's kind of psychological for me. I don't know why I do it. I don't know my conscious reasoning of like why I do that, but it's just something I do, especially with rappers, because I think that it can get lost with flow. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Obviously, the more you listen to it, the more you understand. Right. But like Kendrick Lamar is so extensive and articulate and complex in his work that sometimes I need to break it down for myself before I delve into the musicality. I think that he has so much to say that, and then the music has so much to say that I almost need to compartmentalize the digestion of his music, because he's like probably one of my favorite artists in the world.
And when you do something like that, like how does that inspire you when it comes down to your writing? Do you find yourself doing the same thing before you go into the vocal booth to record vocals? Like, do you find yourself kind of like skimming through your lyrics or reading through your lyrics?
I had I'm not a name dropper, but had an incredible experience this year where I got to work with No ID, and he talked about the bullseye, and this is another thing that I learn a lot. Like, I learned so much about music and songwriting through speaking about it. So when I work with the greats or anyone that I consider one of the greats, I really just ask so many questions. I pride myself on being a student, hence why my first EP was called Influence, because I resigned to the fact that there was any possibility that I'd come up with it myself. I knew that I was inevitably influenced by my favourites. So when he spoke about the bullseye and working with Kanye and 808s and Heartbreak, which is my favourite record of Kanye's and is the reason why I started producing, he spoke about how there's always a bullseye. When you write, there has to be a bullseye. There has to be, when there's a body of work, you need to know what you're aiming for so that everything can kind of come together. And that's what I try and have when I write songs, even to the most, songs are meticulous and they are part of a wider picture. But if I know exactly what I'm trying to say, the musicality, the lyrics, everything leads towards that way because I know the direction I'm going in. So I always try and make sure I know what I'm about to say. And that's not necessarily dictated by lyrics. Sometimes I allow myself to feel through the music, and I freestyle and see what subconsciously comes out and then work towards that.
In that same sense, I feel like you really nailed the bullseye with your vocals, your songwriting, the vulnerability of your songwriting, as well as the strings throughout this album.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like that was such an incredible, collaboration in a sense, marinating all of these elements into this album, Skin. Was this something that was like trial and error in the studio, or is that something that you came into the session, like, this is what I want the sound to be like, and that's what you guys went with?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of direction, even though for the most part I wasn't sure what was happening. I think it's like the perfect balance between allowing things to flow and then being a shepherd is how I got the sound of the album. And allowing collaboration, allowing people to come forth and bring their tools and bring their talents. But when I didn't like something, I made it very clear. But it's knowing, my thing is if I say I don't like something, I need to be able to back it up with what I do like. And with my research and my education and understanding I am a student of music, I'll try and always provide a solution when I say I don't like something. Because it's really easy to say what you don't like. I think it's more abstract to know what you do like and why you like that. And I think solutions are really important because you are generally under deadlines. You are generally going for a lot of things in your brain. You want to sound like your favourite artist, but you're not your favourite artist, and you're really trying to carve out your own sound. So that it's a trial and error for sure. But again, we don't lose the bullseye.
Why Blue May? Why did you reach out to him on DM and tell him to come over so you guys could start working on this album? What was it about the way that he produces or the way that he just creates music that really drew your attention?
Kano is a storyteller, and I felt like he was housed in fantastic interior, great architecture, and a great structural engineer, and I needed someone to house my work. And although I'm not a rapper, I was so enamored by the sonics and the lyricism and everything about Kano, and so it was hard to explain obviously to a label because they're like, what do you mean you've gone for a British Caribbean rapper producer or rapper's producer? And I don't know, it felt right. And whenever I played him any of my demos, he had all the same references as me. He understood what I was going for,
What was that chemistry like when you guys were you guys physically in the studio together?
Yeah.
So what was that chemistry like, that first moment that you started either writing together or recording music? How did he help you step out of your comfort zone, even though it feels like you really did a lot on this record, you really opened up to your audience? So
I was also co-executive producer. He told me to stop thinking, and the overthinking was his job and the feeling was my job. That was literally those were his words.
Wow.
Yeah. And I love leadership, and I love people knowing where to take position and where I need to take the back seat and where I need to be forthcoming. And he made those parameters really clear.
How did you go about figuring out like those cadences and pockets during every single track? Just because again, this album takes us into this world of music, and at the same time, this is one body of work, and it's very cohesive. So, kind of figuring out where your pockets were going to go with your lyrics, and like what kind of cadences you were going to you were going to do them. Like, what was that process like for you?
A lot of it's subconscious. Obviously, when you're writing, it kind of flows. Especially when you're in the flow, it kind of comes out. But I don't know. I mean, like trial and error. Thinking about my favourite people, using references, having mega talented people around me, songwriters, collaborators, musicians who were wonderful, and trusting in that process.
Yeah.
You know, there's a huge element of having to let go in order to grab onto what you want, you know?
Right. Yeah, I have 13 incredible tracks on this album. I love how you mix in those little voice memos throughout the record. It really gives me like old school vibes with like when, growing up, I remember listening to records where they would like do little bits and pieces of movies or whatever. And that kind of gave me that kind of vibe. Like it's
quite a hip hop thing to do, actually.
Yeah.
Like hip hop is fundamentally based in influence and allowing your past, allowing homage to be paid. And I think that was something I was really, really attracted to when I was putting in the voice memos and stuff like that in the record.
Yeah. What song out of these 13 tracks would you say that like really challenged you, whether it was vocally, whether it was mentally because you were writing these lyrics, or just like at the end of the day?
Feet Don't Fail Me Now. Super difficult record to get right. I rewrote the lyrics, like the verse lyrics, like 6 times. I would have like copious amounts of conversation with my label, with my friends, with my manager about what the hell I was talking about, because it was a political song, but political songs are some of the most challenging songs to write. And then the production was the hardest. It was the first song we started and the last song we finished. Yeah.
What was it about the song that you knew that it had to be on this record? Like, why couldn't it just be a single, or why couldn't it be on a follow-up?
Oh, everyone liked it, and I wasn't sure about it, so I basically had to prove myself.
So interesting.
Yeah, I had to prove myself that I liked it, basically, and make it into something I liked.
When you hit such a like political topic like this song, like, how much research do you do outside of it? Just because I feel like it's kind of scary being able to open up about these things if you're unsure of what the truth is, right? So, like, how much research did you find yourself doing before you can actually start writing the song or finalize the song?
I mean, I wrote it 6 times, so I had to do a lot of research. There was a lot of crossing things out. And then there's a huge amount of vulnerability in the song because I am admitting defeat. I am admitting that I am this ironic character that I'm playing. I actually suffer from their problems as well. The song is about someone who finds it easier to be part of a group, to be part of a collective in fear of being cancelled. And this was something that I saw so much of during the Black Lives Matter protests and movement throughout 2020. Especially as a non-black person, I think that there was collective guilt, but there was collective, as a person of colour, there was a collective sympathy. You wanted to be an ally, but you also didn't want to be performative, but you also didn't want to be... And I found that, and also speaking to, my fellow white friends or black friends or brown friends, there were so many psychological nuances in that year that coincided with just the generation that we're in, this cancel culture that is coming up, and people being so afraid to say anything, so they just tick all the boxes, but their mind doesn't change, nothing is decolonized, and also they don't put their hands up. And I think the first step into being on the right side of history is going, I am racist, I am sexist, I am all of these things fundamentally because I've grown up in the West, and admitting defeat first. But this song is this character who signs all the petitions, who carries the picket signs, who poses in wildfires, but refuses to actually delve into changing their mind exactly and do something, and that doing something is not the signing the petitions, it's actually holding themselves accountable. And actually we are all guilty of being that person. Every single one of us. Even if I am a person of colour and I might have shared suffering to one of my black brothers and sisters, that doesn't matter. I'll never know what that feels like. But I also, that's fine to admit, and that should be a comfortable conversation to have, not that I need to be educated, but I think it's important, and not that it's anyone's job to educate me. It's important to educate myself, you know, and to admit that I am scared. I am scared of cancel culture. I am a victim of everything that is happening around me, and and I didn't want to point the finger, because it's not my place to tell people what to do. And that's why the song was so difficult, basically. I mean, all that waffle, that's why it was so difficult, because I was having all of those conversations over and over again, and then going, and how do I make that a 3.5 minute song that just so happens to be one of the biggest songs on the record, and a pop song. I mean,
I don't know how you pull. I don't know how you pull.
Like a fucking mosaic, basically. It's like with a Pritt stick. Imagine you had to make a mosaic with a Pritt stick. That's how it felt making Feet Don't Fail Me Now.
I'd let someone else take the reins.
There you go. But the whole song is about how I need to hold myself accountable, so I had to do it myself.
So the fact that this song was so impactful, both like to your audience, but also to yourself, like just because of everything that went through before you can actually finalize it, how did that kind of change the impact or the direction of like new material moving forward? Do you see yourself talking about more political topics, or do you see yourself like just whatever happens?
I think that I am starting to notice what I don't have musically, but also what I'm noticing is that political is micro and macro. There is personal political, and then there's global political, and I felt like once I had that song out the way, it's kind of opened me into a world where I'm a little bit less scared, ironically. And so, I think that I might not have right now, I guess there's a lot of personal political in the new stuff that I'm writing. There's just not as much filter, which is ironic, because I know people say I'm unfiltered, but imagine me even more unfiltered, I think. I think that's right, no? More unfiltered now. Way more. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
What do you think it is? Is it like you're working with a new producer? Is it you're working with new like co-writers? Is it like just because of what we experienced the last couple of years?
The opposite. I purposefully sought for limitation on the second album. I think what happens is people smell success, taste success, digest success, have more recognition. Oh, the first album is critically acclaimed. Let me open all these doors. But actually, I don't think you need to fix something if it's not broken. And I'm really, really interested in how we created when we first started creating, and Innocence's experience, like William Blake. I just want to go back to that innocent place. And I think limitation is key. So basically I've limited myself in order to get to that point, if that makes sense. No one's heard the new music, but I'm trying to speak.
The fact that you're like being more open and more like less more filtered at the same time.
I'm more open, but I'm actually way more closed now. I just think that you can really get lost in the fireworks and the diamante and the crystals, and I'd rather not. I'd rather just keep the doors closed and see what happens. You know.
Well, I'm excited for like obviously more music from you, but for now, like I definitely want everyone to dive in and dissect this album, More Skin, which is out now. To close us off, like what is like one of your proudest moments from this record?
I think that I was deeply overwhelmed when I played Pyramid stage at Glastonbury. It's like one of the most iconic stages in Britain and British music history, and to be able to stand there and perform my first album was just like wild. I mean, I started crying and didn't even know the tears were coming, so I was like, definitely that this year.
Well, I look forward to seeing and hearing more from you. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me. You guys be sure to check out Joy Crookes. The debut album Skin is out now, and thanks for watching here on Front Row Live.